Hello everyone and welcome to the registration lecture for Django level 5. A lot of the coding for working with the users and authorization appears in the user file. The basic idea is that we check if there is a post request and then perform some sort of action based off that information. Sometimes we will want to save that information directly to the database. Other times we will set commit equal to false inside of the save method so we can manipulate the data before saving it to the database. This helps prevent collision errors from saving it twice. So instead we just commit equal to false the first time and then save it after we are done manipulating the data. Figuring out the registration views is an extension of what we learn about when discussing Django forms. So make sure to review that content if you don't remember it. This entire process is best shown through code. So we are going to jump to our visa files that code through it all. And we also fix a small mistake made in the previous lecture when working with the forms and how to keep an eye out for those errors. So we'll start by fixing that small mistake and then we'll jump to the views.py file. Let's get started into the code editor. Okay, here I am at the my code editor and here is my views.py file. I have opened this and in my forms.py file and there is actually a small error in this form.py file and we are going to walk through how we can discover this sort of error with working with uh, views.py. So what I am going to do is start off by creating the most basic view, which is our index view. That's for the home page. So I will say request and then I am going to return render and I will say request and then pass in basic app slash indexed HTML. And then the next video I want to make is for the registration page and we'll start off by saying it, and if we call this view register, it's going to take in a request and we will create a variable called registered and I will set it equal to false. Okay, and I'm going to depend on this variable to tell if someone's been registered yet or not. And I will say if request method is equal to post, uh, okay, that is equal to post. Here's what we will do. I should say two equal signs here become I am checking for equality. What we are going to do is get information from both of the forms just like we would if any other form. So I will create a variable called user underscore form and this matches the variable uh, I'm going to send back with the context dictionary and this will grab information from the user form and we'll set data is equal to request post and then the other form we had was the profile underscore form and we will set this equal to user. Okay, so user profile info and this is where I caught that mistake. So notice here I want the user form and the user profile info form and then I want this data to be equal to request dot post. Okay, but I noticed that since I am using the forms I should import the forms. So I come back up here and I go to import theme and this is where we are going to kind of catch a little bit of glitch or error. I will say from basic app forms import the user form comma import and I see here user profile info user form comma user profile info. But remember the user profile info is our model. So if I come to models.py, I have user profile info as a model. I should not have that as the same name here under the forms.py file or have the user form and then user profile info. So what I need to fix is changes to say instead of user profile info be user profile info form. Then save that and then come back up here. So to view that to view.py and change this from user profile info to user profile info form and then save that. So the main mistake here that was made was instead of saying user profile info form, we accidentally use the same model name, and that's the kind of big no no. Okay. So what you should do instead is always add some sort of term form when you are dealing with a model form. That way it doesn't get confused on this line where it says model is equal to the form name. Otherwise it thinks it's a self-referential call. Alright, if you have any questions on that, feel free to ask me. Okay, after watching this video, I will I will give the answer. There should have been a note on internet on in ChatGPT also you can get help. So we'll come back to views.py and continue working on this going to collapse that tree so we see a little more room. So I have that user form, that profile form created those two variables. Now I want to check if both forms are valid. And if you ever have questions on any of these steps, you can always reference the note that code as well. So I will say user underscore form is valid and profile form is underscore valid, and this is where we are going to do stuff if they are valid. So we'll do some different actions with the user form versus the profile form. So I'm going to set the user equal to user underscore form and I will save that information directly to the database. Okay, so then I'm going to say user dot set and I will call a set password method on this and I will set user dot password, and this is essentially having the password, this is hashing the password, and this is essentially you can see this is the design. So it goes into your settings.py file and it sets it as the hash, and then after this we are going to save this. So basically that this is happening is we are graving the user form, saving it to the database, then we are hashing the password by saying set password method, and then we save that hashed password to the database. So we save those changes to the user, and now we want to actually deal with that extra information. Remember that was their website link and their profile picture. So we will say profile is equal to profile underscore form, and I'm going to say dot save, but here is where I am going to pass in commit is equal to false. I don't want to commit to the database yet, otherwise I may get errors with collisions when it tries to override this user. So what we are going to do instead is say profile the user is equal to user profile dot user, and that sets up that one-to-one relationship. So if you come back to models, remember over here the user profile info that user is equal to a one-to-one relationship with the user here. So this one-to-one relationship is defined in the views with this line of code profile user is equal to user, which is the user form, which if you come back here is this original form model equals user. So follow out the steps, these steps, and it's a little harder to show because it's a kind of all three of these files linking at the same time, but hopefully you can kind of get the idea of how we are relating that extra profile information, those extra attributes to the original one-to-one relationship. And then what we want to do is check if they actually provided a profile picture. And we will say if profile underscore pic is in request post, excuse me, means request files, okay, because it's an actual request.files. So we'll say profile. The profile pic is equal to request files, and this is basically a dictionary with all the files they uploaded in the request. So you will use very similar tactics when dealing with other types of files, not just images. But if you want to upload a CSV file, PDF file, resume, etc., you're going to be seeing request files to actually find those, and you will be dealing with the key based on what you define in the models. So we'll say if the profile pic and request that models, we set the attribute profile pic equal to the request files, which is kind of acting like a dictionary, and then profile pic, and then we are going to save the model after doing that. So you will say profile and then save. And if they have done all of this, so both forms are valid, we save the user and we save their profile, and we set up their picture. Then I am going to set registered equal to true. So the registration was successful. Okay. And what I am going to do is print the error. So if I get an as a statement here, that means the forms were invalid. If we get else statement, so one of the forms or both the forms were invalid. And what we can do is, in this case, just print out the error. So I can say user from errors, and then we can also just do this almost like a tuple. So we'll say profile form errors, and there is other ways you can deal with that. Later on, we'll show, especially during the clone projects, what right now we can just print out the actual errors, and then we'll say else, and the else lines up. Now with this, if but over here with the if request method is equal to post, so in this else, that means the request was on an HTTP request, so they didn't actually post anything. It will do here is set everything up. So we'll say user form is equal to an instance of user form. Now we will say profile form is equal to an instance of the user profile form, per user profile info form. Okay. So, and then once this is all done, we are going to return a render of the request, and then that we want to do is show them that file we want to import this info. Okay. And yes, this is the registration file. So registration.html. So let me confirm. That's what I call that looking under templates basic app. Yes, it is registration.html. That's good. And then finally, I need to pass in the context dictionary. So if I take a quick peek at registration.html, remember we used several things here. So we used user form, profile form, and then registered. So these are three things I need to pass along in the views.py file as my context dictionary. So the first thing, we can actually start this on a new line. Okay. Just so it's a little more organized, the first key is that user form, and that's just going to be equal to the user form we created. The second key value pair I want is the profile form. Again, that's just going to be the profile form we created. And then finally, the third thing I want is that registered key value pair, and that again matches up with registered, and it's very common to have the context dictionary. Uh, keys match up exactly with the values. That way it's really readable and you remember what is what. So that is it for the registration view. Now, as I mentioned, it is a lot of coding and it is going to be kind of another round of a lot of coding when we talk about logging in and logging out. But if we scroll up here, we should be able to see the steps. So first we have the registration view. We check if they are registered. We set it equals to false. So if we kind of assume at first they are not registered, then, if the request is equal to post, we grab the information of the forms. We check if both forms are valid. If so, we grab everything from the base user form, then we grab the profile form, and we got to double check that to see if there is a picture in there before we actually save it. And then we set registered as equal to true if they did type in a post there, but there was an error, so they were both not valid or one of them was not valid, then we'll just print out the errors and then else part. So that means there was no request yet, so the request method is not equal to post. Then we just set the forms, so we'll set user form and the profile info form, and then finally we return the render. So let's save all of this and let's actually test this out. And I am sure there be some bugs we have to fix, but let's see how we do. So I'm going to clear this. Okay, so it should be closed, and then I am going to say python manage.py, and I am going to just for safety, because I was fixing some of the mistakes, so I'm going to migrate. Okay, all right. So no migration apply. But let's also check with the make migration command, basic app. Sure. So there is no problem with kind of being extra paranoid about this with running these migrate commands, even if you don't think you need to. So there we go. So we applied all migrations. We should be good, which means I'm going to actually try to run the server. So we'll say python manage.py run server, and let's see if we get any errors. Well, fortunately, no errors on actually running the code. Let's see if we get an error on the website. So bringing in the website looks like that is working well. Let's see if the registration page works. Click on registers. So register is also working. Says username, and there is some auto stuff that gets filled out based off. Okay, the validation requirement. So we'll say new user email address. We'll just say hello at the rate gmail.com. Uh, Password, this can be whatever. I will type in text password portfolio site. So I will say https www.google.com and check out the documentation for validation of these inputs. Okay, so we discussed inputting or validation input when we were talking about forms in another Django section of the course. But for actual URL fields, it usually requires you to say HTTPS. So most people would not put that in and it will give an error. So what you can do is when actually working with that file in the views.py, you can check if it start with that. If not, you can just inject it in. Then for the profile pic, you can just choose any file. So I will not choose one for now. Instead, I'm just going to click register and see if it is works. So if we hit register, great. It says thank you for registering. So what we need to do is actually check if this person now is in our database. But in order to do that, if I click on admin, we need a super user. So let's go and create that. But because this is our new app, so I'm going to drag this here away and let's do console control C to kill this. Okay, and then I will say python manage.py create a super user to enter, and we will say name of the user, and email address. So that is fine. So training at the rate this, and then password I will use test password. Test password super user was created successfully. Now let's run the server again. Okay, after creating super user successfully. So says Python manage.py server going to come back to the home page and bring it in. So there is our home page and we should have already registered that person. So let's click on admin, type in our username and then type in the password, login, see if we get everything. Okay, so here we have our basic app, and if you don't see this, it's because you probably forgot to actually register on the admin file. So make sure you do that. But we will hit user profile info. Great. We have that new user. We can click on it and we can see all their information, user profile, portfolio, site profile pic. That looks good. So let's go back. And if we go to yeah, here home under the site administration, we can hit here on users. And now we have this user, which this super user, and then we have the new user, which is hello@gmail.com. And if we click on that new user, we can see their create uncreate password, but we actually can't see that password. And that's because of the hashing algorithm that we used, and the particular hashing algorithm we used with that argon to makes this a pretty secure. In fact, it's very secure. And you can see that even some of the information is censored to us as a super administrator. So there is no way to actually get this user password. And essentially, there is no way if someone ever asked for your password that you would ever be able to give it to them. So this is so secure that even you as the administration yeah, are not going to be able to see their password. You can see their hash values, some of the censored, but you are never going to actually be able to give back the user their password. If you do want to change the password, you can eventually set this up automatically, but you can hit this form and create a new password and then enter that password again and then change the password. We'll never be able to do is just tell the user what their user original password was. The security is too high for you as a super user to even find that out. Okay. So there is some other information here, and we'll talk about more stuff with Django administration in a future lecture. But successfully we registered someone to the site, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so coming up next, we want to talk about logging in and logging out for this site. Okay.